Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Equalizer. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, episode is very true to life and very sad, type of situation that sadly we see time and time again, especially, basically it's like a rap beef situation. And that's a sad thing too, because this whole situation between Delilah and Dre Biggs, it was something that was initially started as promotion, because obviously some people say that, this doesn't just allocate to just rap, this allocates to a lot of stuff. It's celebrity beefs and stuff like that. It's this is just a marketing ploy or something like that. A lot of people will see things like that. Not saying the general public it does, but some people see it as that, how much stuff is actually real, how much is just to get eyes on things and stuff like that. That becomes a part of the conversation. But essentially, but the thing is, this ends up, like I said, it's something that happens in the real world, in real life, so many times, of just when you're about that life, about what you rap about. Obviously you rap about what you know, but sometimes that goes too far where it's that's all you become, and you surround yourself in it, and you stay in that. And sometimes, sometimes it's too late to get away from it. And even when you are able to get away from it, when you've lived that life or something, sometimes it's not the easiest way to get away from that. So Delilah ended up apparently killing Dre Biggs because there was a lot of beef between them and the different sets they kind of represented. But Delilah's wife is no, there's no way my husband did this, because the person who apparently one named Sid Slade dropped a song on SoundCloud that basically dropped details about Dre Biggs' murder that never were made public. So, and obviously the youngest Nasir, his son, was no, there's no way my dad's a murderer. And now in retrospect, it's now it makes a lot of sense why he was so adamant, whereas his brother Dowd was nah, dad did what he needed to do, because he was kind of about that. Obviously their mom was yeah, he took our husband, my Delilah, going to prison really hard, and it hardened him, and now he wants to kind of be about that life, kind of following in his father's footsteps. But even she's that's the sad thing. The joke of it all, this wasn't even real beef. It turned into something because when you pretend for so long, when you're about something for so long, once again, it kind of becomes your life, whether you intended it to or not. And now it's had larger implications, because now it's turned into beef between these two different groups, and it's affected the community. It's hit the streets. Working with Dante, Robin tries to ask Delilah about it, but he's very adamant. He's no, this wasn't me. I'm not the one. He's yeah, I did it. He kept being no, but I'm the one that did it. But it's no, he's definitely hiding something. Because initially you're right, if he's going above and beyond like this, then it has to be someone he's protecting, which she was immediately no, both my sons have alibis, so it couldn't have been them. And I was because I'm about to say, that seems like the go-to answer there. So the fact is they immediately brought that up there, because they're oh, you would think that. And so they immediately no, they both have alibis. I was okay, never mind. I thought that was kind of I thought that was interesting. But now it's bro, who else would he have protected? And I like that as the episode progresses, we learn, obviously, the shady side behind everything, because we find out not only is Delilah hiding stuff, and obviously Dowd's about this life too, because he's off recording beef tracks and trying to perpetuate things, because he blames himself. It's my dad wouldn't even be in the situation he's in right now if it wasn't for me. I got jumped by people from the other side of things, and his dad blamed himself, and he's no, it wasn't his fault, it's my fault. But Delilah felt like it was his fault, because he let things spread too far, because this rap beef led to everyone making money. It's right, because you get the fuel fire, because it's the thing of right, you drop a diss track, everyone wants to listen. I'm oh, I'm gonna listen to this person's diss track because I want to hear what they have to say about you. And it's so back and forth, and it just fuels the fires, but it lines people's pockets. That's where that record executive dude comes into play, because he didn't want Delilah and Dre Biggs to make peace, because they were actually going to be on a track together to end it all, because what happened to his son, what has happened to the community, Delilah was nah, he didn't want that to continue. He wanted to try and make things right. But that guy was nah, I'm trying to convince him not to. And even Dante's do you know how effed up that is, that you're saying that? You're admitting that? You're so casually admitting. It's nothing he could get charged for. Being a slime ball, you don't... I mean, unless it's something criminal, you don't get locked up for just being a greedy slime ball. But it's like Dante's like, yeah, what about the effect it's had on the community? We're kind of forgetting about that. He was just like, yeah, sure, whatever, and just kind of moved on. I'm like, man, that's a dick move to be like, yo, this is something that's about potentially like ending some beef and, you know, stopping some bloodshed, bringing a community together. And you're like, nah, but the money we're making, it's like, dude, human greed, it's one. I mean, it's a sin for a reason, right? It's one of these 7 deadly. So it's like, you know, but still, it's just like, that's wild, because it turns out he was paying the janitor to keep his mouth shut, because the janitor saw that this executive producer was there. He didn't fire the shots, but he is Dilemma's alibi, because when the shots were fired, he was with Dilemma at the time. So there's no way Dilemma could have done it. But it's like, but you still let Dilemma take the fall. It's like, yeah, he insisted, and it's just like, you could have exonerated him at any point in time. It's like, you know, because for him, he's like, you know what sucks about it? The fact is he told me to do that. Now, like, oh, you know how much money I'm missing? I'm like, once again, it's back to that. I'm like, could you at least pretend not to be a shitty human being in this moment? Could you just be like, yeah, like, at least fake it? You're just like, nah, I mean, like, I guess it's like, why do I have to hide the slime ball that I am? I'm like, I guess he's so narcissistic that it's like, it's fine. I can be the slime ball I want to be out in the open without judgment or reprimand or something. I don't know. The fact is, he was all about that. But obviously, it's like, well, if Dilemma didn't shoot Dre VIDS, then like, who did? Because they also talked to because what led Robin to talk to Dowd in the first place, the oldest son, was that they went to see Dre VIDS like protege, and he was like, nah, like, there's no way one of Dilemma's kids would have been there. It would have been a problem if him or anyone else from that set would have came. They would have left body bad, blah blah blah. But also at the time, Dowd was like laying down a diss track, so it's like, you know, there's recording proof of when he was doing that, so he couldn't have been at the murder. But they ultimately were able to track I forgot how they did it, but they were able to track down the original, or at least the location of the where the original like track by Sid Slade was made, and they found a Sydney, and that Sydney ended up being a girl, and it's like, oh. And it turns out she didn't write the lyrics. She actually found someone's notebook. And the moment we saw the notebook, I was like, serious, because they made a point to show it off earlier in the episode. But like I said, that's why it made it so adamant about, like, right, when he was so being like, my dad's not a murderer, like, why he was the most adamant about it, because he blamed himself. He's like, I'm the one that shot Dre VIDS. But it's interesting, because I really like that conversation that Robin has with Sid about, like, it's like she because she's a girl in a rap game too, like, no one's going to listen to what she has to say. It's like, and I thought it was kind of an interesting perspective where she's like, you know, because like some ladies in a rap game are about the sexuality, which she's like, yo, not trying to like take away from them or anything. You do you. That's about empowerment. She says like, that's just not me. Anacondas and Peaches, that's not me. But, you know, and once again, it's like, you know, it's all about being true to who you are. So if it's like, if that's something that you and as an artist, you're like, you know, because everyone, their art is reflected in different ways. It's like, you want to talk about, you know, you want to make a WAP, you make you make a song like WAP. But it's like, if that's not your cup of tea, that's not your cup of tea, you know. So I mean, music is divided enough for people to like to find their own lane, to be like, yeah, this is my lane, this is what I want to represent, this is what I want to be about. But the point I'm going so deep into it, I really like the conversation of like, you know, she wants to be like one of the greats, you know, and it's just like, oh yeah, like some OGs like MC Light, and I was like, dude, that's crazy. Because I also think it's interesting, like, I know I reference this like in like season 1. It's so, I mean, you know, they had to have written some of this. I'm curious, like, does Queen Latifah have any like input? I don't know if she's an exec. I don't pay much attention to the show. Like, I don't know if she's an executive. I think she might be an executive. Usually leads end up in like an executive producer type of position and stuff like it. But I'm curious, like, does she include any of this stuff? Like, does she kind of give her insight in certain regards? Because like some of these conversations like flow like very close to who she is in the regard of, it's like, yo, when she's talking about like an OG and stuff like that, I'm like, well, you're an OG in the game as well. So that's why I'm like, because I referenced like something in season 1, I'm like, you're one of those OGs as well. So for her to be like, all you want to have to do is be true to yourself, like, because Sid wanted to kind of like by being like having some hard raps, it's like, yo, by being hardcore, like I can like get myself noticed first, but it's like, yeah, but that's a slippery slope, because once you're all about that, it's like, no, you want to do this, you keep practicing, you be true to you, don't front, like, because that ends up, that's why this whole dilemma, everything happened, is because it went from fronting to be like, well, it was initially fake, but now I've been in it so long, I have to, because like so much has been built around it. So am I saying there aren't people who aren't just straight up about it? It's like, no, there are people who are just straight up about it, but there are all other people, some pretty prominent people that have kind of publicly been, in that rap game to be like, oh, that person's super not about it. They were just fronting, and now like it's trickled out. I'm not about to get all up in that, but still, it's just, once again, it's just like, it's not just like a hyperbolized thing for the show. It's like, no, like we've seen it time and time again in real life of how like this is played out, and how people like may not necessarily be what they rap about, but it's just like, oh, this is going to sell the most. This image I've crafted of myself needs to be, and it kind of just consumes you entirely, and it's just, you lose a bit of who you were to fit this image that makes not just you money, makes a lot of people a lot of money. Hence why that douchebag record producer was like, no, executive record producer or whatever, being like, no, we got to keep this beef alive. But yeah, it turns out, circling back to it, Nasir is the one who pulled the trigger, but he only did it twice, because he got a text saying like, oh, like the whole thing with Dre VIDS, like the whole meeting is a setup. And the moment that happened, I was like, someone said this, because especially when he was like, I saw Dre VIDS bring out a piece as well. I'm like, he got a text too. Someone set this up. Nasir got scared and accidentally shot him, but only twice. We know he was shot 3 times. And so Delilah like rushed him out of there after the 2 shots, but it turns out like obviously Dre VIDS wasn't dead at that point. Those 2 shots wouldn't have been fatal. The fatal shot was the one to the heart. So someone else killed him. So now at that point, it was about trying to figure out who it was and why. But ultimately, they were able to trace the text messages, even though it was from like a year ago, and because it turns out the person who used it was Dre VIDS' protege, because he also used that to call his mom. I'm like, I guess it was that dumb criminal thing of like, well, because no one's going to come looking, so I guess you never really thought about it. But it's like, the purpose of a burner phone is for you to not make personal calls. Well, why would you? That's kind of that. Once again, not a criminal mastermind, but still, I mean, it's a good thing he isn't. But it's like the go-to thing is like you use a burner phone for like certain things. Outside of those certain things, you don't use it for anything else, and you destroy it afterwards. Like that's, I mean, I'm saying that based on watching enough TV, but luckily he didn't, and he was able to be caught, because it turns out he's built his entire image off of all of this, the beef and everything, like beef and violence sells, and he's made a lot of money off of it. And Dre VIDS, as well as Delilah, squashing the beef and coming together like this. But that would have been like, that's also the thing too of like, but also like that would have been a whole thing too of like, oh, like it would have been a temporary boost, but it's like people would have been like, yo, like people would have rallied behind like, yeah, we're putting this beef aside, yeah, this beautiful thing of bringing the community together. But it's also like, nah, he was threatened about what his money, he was like, he built an image off of this, he made so much money, and he would go, even went as far like he didn't care who was going to die, even though like, yo, this is your mentor, he trained you, you talked about like how he brought you into the game and stuff like that, and not only were you setting him up to die, you actually killed him yourself, because it's like, right, if he's going to like betray everything that we built, all the money we made by like punking out like that, I'm like, yo, that's crazy. He didn't care who died, whether it was Delilah or Dre VIDS, but he couldn't take the chance that Dre VIDS survived, because he did survive the 2 shots. If he like survived and kept asking questions afterwards, so he had to make sure like nothing ever came back to him. So that's why he decided to kill Dre VIDS himself. Delilah's oldest son Dowd shows up because he wanted to ask questions the moment he heard from Nasir the truth about what happened, and he was about to kill him, because it's like, right, this is kind of on you, and my dad's been rotting away in a prison because of you. But Robin stops him because it's like, right, your father went to jail to protect your brother. He's willing to spend 25 years in prison for your brother. You think he'd be okay exchanging one for another? It's like, no, do not let this violence, all of this has ruined so many lives. Don't let it ruin yours. And so he dropped the gun. Luckily, once again, he's not the criminal mastermind. Home dude was still recording his vocals at the time, so the mic was still open. So everything, his confession got recorded. So he gets to go away. Obviously, in the aftermath of all of this, dilemma is sad that like things kind of came, like everything came to a head, everything played out like this. But at the very least, the truth, it did kind of set them free. And now with this, the truth being out there, now we can all potentially find a way to move forward to kind of heal from this. Because even Rama's like, your family will find a way back from this. But it's up to, even Dante saying, it's like, yeah, but it's going to be up to you to save, fix the community that you helped break. And even his son Dowd is like rapping to like put it all out there, like, let's put our guns down, like, we're in this like business of death if we continue down this route. And being there for his brother and his mom at the end, I thought it was kind of a nice, it's just a tragic situation all around that led to this. And that's the crazy thing, like, you'd never think music could lead to that, but like sometimes like that bleeds over in so many regards. So you always have to be careful what you say and what you do. You have to, words matter, and how you represent yourself matters, so I'd actually skipped over it, but I really thought it was a cute, well, obviously it was a situation of when when the biker tried to shoot at Robin, but luckily she ducked out of the way. And I love it. It's like, right, did you get a script? And she was like, no, it was a disc. The person's 5'9". They're right-handed, but they shot with their left because of the throttle or whatever. And I was like, and I love that Dante's looking like, well, next time, could you get a more detail? It'd be helpful if you could get more details or something like that. I was like, obviously joking, but I was like, that was a really cute moment between them. Because obviously, like, it's like, yo, you're like, we're messing with some like pretty big time like street gangs and stuff like that mixed up in all this, sets and groups. So it's like, be careful. She's like, I got this, but thanks for your concern. It's like, yeah, I love their little back and forth. Love them obviously being able to openly work together. It's really dope. Obviously, another big aspect of this kind of tied into the case itself is Mel and Harry. Like, Harry's free. He's like, I get to walk around the bar, but he can't help, and he's getting that itch because it's like, right, like, what can I do to help when I can't even touch a computer? It's like, well, if you can't do it, you can help get Mel to help you. And it's kind of what I was suggesting last episode, how like Harry would turn to Mel and be like, okay, so you do this, do that. I figured it'd be a little frustrating. Like, no, let me handle it. Like, no, like some of those same conversations kind of happened this episode that I brought up last episode might happen. And I thought it was super cute. And I love that even from the beginning, Harry's like, well, I'm the control freak and she's kind of a control freak too. And Mel's like, yeah. We'll most likely murder each other. And it is the issue of like, I was like, well, you don't have to hit search again. And she's just like, stop. And he's like, well, she's like, no, you go ahead and do it. Oh, wait, you can't. She's like, you know what? I do have the FBI on speed dial. So, like, later on, it's just easier for him just to, like, hide away. It's like, right, he has to pretend, like, all right, cannot get caught with this. It's like, oh, it's like being 12 and hiding with a cigarette, except the cigarette will get me locked up for life type of situation, so... Even later on, hiding in a bathroom, just like the way they have to go about him hiding, like working, rather than getting Mel to do it herself, because it's like, well, for one, I'm trying to save my marriage because we're definitely at each other's throats because of just who we are as people and our personalities clashing. But also, the fact is, it's like, it will be a speedier process. I mean, granted, it's already taking a long time because they don't have access to the facility. He's just using the bar's Wi-Fi. She's like, no, it's not meant for that. It's meant for people to have a good time and stuff like that. She's like, it's not meant for us to do what we're doing still. I thought it was just kind of a cute moment between them. I do like that Robin does, it's like, hey, we get our bat cave back, and it's like, right, we're going to, it's like, it's off the red, like no one, even the feds still think it's sealed up and everything. So we are back in business and stuff like that, because it's like, right, Harry needs his own space to do his thing. Because I was curious like how they're going to handle that going forward. I was like, because Harry can't get caught for computer, but it's like, right, we're going to have to be more careful, make sure that we're not found. He's like, this time we can make no more risk. We're going to be in a situation where we're going to be completely invisible, so no one can see what we're up to. So I thought it was kind of a nice touch to be like, all right, but like I said, I had wondered if they were going to temporarily get another hacker involved, because obviously, Harry called in a hacker's help off screen to help with some of the stuff this episode, but I was wondering if that was going to be like a permanent thing or not, but it's like, no, it seems like it was a, it's like, nah, Harry's was off tech support for a bit, but not back in full swing. Difference is, now when you're done with a day's work, you get to go up and enjoy like the sun and just life in general. I am curious, because once again, we know about, they reference like the friends and family he had to leave behind. Now that he's back from the living dead, I'm curious what that means in the long run on the family front. We'll have to wait and see how they'll react to that, because he doesn't have to be dead anymore. I assume that turned into a storyline thing, but we'll have to wait and see. But other than that, some elements that came up in this episode ended up being conversations about, Delilah going to college or not. And she doesn't want to go to college, but everyone, like, Robin's like, no, you're going to college. And then Vi's like, you were kind of excited about it, but why now? Well, the reason why she had to change her mind is because new boy in her life, Cameron, who got invited in by Vi, it's like, oh, he's not about college. And he's a straight A student, but for him, it's like, college is, for him, it's like, it's designed to keep people like us out. Like, why would I go to a place? Why waste money on a place that doesn't even want me there in the first place, But it is that complicated thing of like, no, like by going to college, you open the doorway for other people as well. And it's like, having a higher education, which I'm not someone that is, I'm pro college if you believe it is right for you. Me, I never went to college. I don't like, who knows, maybe when I am even older, I am 29 now, but if I'm even older, I might be one of those people that decides to go back to college at an even later point in life. But it's just because I'm like, man, I didn't have the work ethic for like high school. Like I super just kind of skated by in high school. I'm like, if I don't have the dedication for like high school, like, and I know my personality, like if I'm not going to give it my all, I'm not going to have my parents like burn their money just for me to go to college. Regardless, tangents and all that. So I just thought that was kind of a neat little element for her, just because they have the very different perspectives. And even Delilah was like, oh, maybe you're fronting, like you don't want to go to college because you think you won't be able to get in. But, at the end, they ended up making up, even though they had their differences of opinion. He's like, I respect, like, if you believe college is right for you, I respect that. I just hope that you can respect that college might not be for me. But it seems like there's kind of a budding romance there and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of really sweet and adorable how giddy she got at the end when he was like, oh, you want to go see like that new Jordan Peele movie in the theater? She's like, yeah. And she's like, ah. I'm like, oh, that's super cute. I once again just remember that being a teenager, being, crushing and just like being like super in love and getting giddy like that. Nevertheless, like I said, a lot of interesting things in this episode. I'm very interested to ultimately see where everything ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.